What's up? What's up? Welcome to another episode of All Over Voiceover with Kit VH. I'm your host, Kit VH, and I've done this from time to time where I release either a best of or a re-release of a previous conversation that might bear some revisiting. And given the situation where, my talent agency has made it very clear to all of us that in order to be submitted for auditions, we have to have our home studios in a place where we've got either Source Connect or an ISDN or IPDiddle, which everyone has access to. IPDiddle is terrific, and I know a lot of folks are using that as an option. If you go to their website, what is their website? Hang on, I'm consulting the IPDTL site. It is ipdtl.com, and you can use that. So in a way, like everyone has access to IPDiddle. And you can create an account, or you can just get it for the purpose of a session. But the key there is having a decent microphone and a quiet recording space and a little bit of proficiency. Well, this is not new, I assume, to the people who are listening to this show. But I had a conversation back in August of 2017 with two of the most sought after VO home studio. I hate the word guru, but I'm going to use it. These guys, Dan Lenard and George Whittam, they host VOBS weekly on YouTube and VOBS.com. But we also had a great conversation about home recording, about microphones, about recording situations, all the stuff that's become extraordinarily relevant in the past 30 days and will be for the foreseeable future, even as probably as we come back online, the issues of, will agencies maintain booths to come in? How accessible do you need to be as a recording artist in terms of what you're capable of doing at home versus can you come into studio? There's right now there's just a lot of confusion and a lot of speculation and certainly a lot of fear and a lot of learning curve. And it was one of the things I was saying to a friend of mine who just got on Source Connect this week, and I did a test of Source Connect with her. And, it's like I've had the benefit of time to develop my home studio. And that's something that folks who are sprinting right now to get equipment and all that other kind of stuff are faced with this unique challenge. So I'm here to tell you all of this is knowable. All of it is accessible. As daunting as DAWs can be, or as different software that you have to use to record, you can work in GarageBand, you can work in Audacity, you can work in Twisted Wave, and the best thing to do is just log time. There is no substitute for spending time with your recording equipment and really listening to what sounds good and how dead can you make it. I have a broadcast capable studio here in my house, okay? And just straight up pure transparency, It is a chunk of a walk-in closet that when I say I soundproofed, that means I put up sound deadening panels that I had bought, but that's because I have a very sensitive microphone. I have a Sennheiser 416 mic, so I really need this area to be nice and quiet. But the back area is still a closet, and it's open. So this week I went about the business of finding a way to deaden that. And I was looking for furniture pads. I was trying to find, something that would be really great and dead it. And I didn't want to take up blankets and stuff. I ended up buying a sleeping bag from Big Five Sporting Goods for $30, and then hung that with a couple anchor points that I drilled into my wall, $15 a piece, $15 for a pack of 4 anchor points. I drove them into the drywall, and then I bought it's like strap tie downs that you would put on a truck to tie down something in your back or whatever. Got a tie down set, and the anchor points are nice and strong, and I got that strung up, and then I clamped the sleeping bag up to that. And is it soundproof? Absolutely not. Can I hear my wife when she's doing the dishes? Absolutely. But what it does do is it deadens the sound in the room. It makes it warmer. It makes it more intimate. And it gives me more confidence that in my reads and in the sessions that I do in this space, they're going to sound more professional, and I'm ultimately able to give my clients the best possible audio that I can give them. And I'm always sending them uncompressed wave files so that they can take their engineer can take that audio and do what he needs to do or she needs to do on their end to noise reduce, to put into the mix, all those things. One of my guests on the show, Sarah Jane Sherman, wonderful casting director of animation, made a fantastic post on Facebook, and I don't know if it was in any other places, but it was a really terrific observation where she was sharing, having cast a couple cartoons over the past couple weeks, not just cast, but produce the shows. And she put in there kind of a reminder to actors that, like, hey, the tech staff also gets it, that this is an unprecedented time and that we're all learning, and that every one of these sessions that we did were filled with challenges, and that everybody understands, and to cut yourself a little bit of slack, and to remember that even though now we're becoming engineers and we're becoming more comfortable with the workings of our equipment, we also still have to be the performer. We've got to be the artists. And I think that's a really important point to really cling to and remember is, like, trust that the support in this community is present. The people whose faces you won't see, but the voices you might hear at the beginning and end of a session, they're present. They're there to help you. We're all in the goal of getting your voice onto digital tape or into a digital thing so that they can use it. That's the goal, and they want it to be as good and relaxed, and they want the fullness of what you bring as a performer to it. So the way you can help them is by getting to know your equipment a little bit better, because you're the eyeballs, you're the specific, you know what those things are, but they're also there to help you during this process as we make this transition. So anyway, this is longer than I intended it to be. It's just sort of a rant, and just to calm yourself down. I had to calm myself down. But yeah, here's my conversation with George and Dan from a couple years back specifically about home recording and about the challenges, and some microphone recommendations and other things. And hopefully that's helpful, and there's an ace you can keep. And if not, at least it's an entertaining conversation with three nerds talking about audio recording. What's up? Welcome to an all-new episode of All Over Voiceover with Kip. That's too many alls. You know what? There's been too many false starts. I'm keeping it anyway, just to make my guests angry. Welcome to All Over Voiceover with Kip VH. I'm your host, Kip, and with me in studio are a couple guys who, if you don't know, you need to know. You need to tune into their show. You need to work with them. Both of them are top guys, not only here in Los Angeles, but across the world, really, right?
Yep.
And they're nodding, and not nodding with any sense of irony whatsoever.
Oh, wait, we're not on camera, are we?
Yeah, no, we're not on camera at all. No, that's right. I have Dan Lenard and George Whittam, the VOBS guys, who host a weekly, bi-weekly podcast.
It's weekly.
Weekly
Monday
podcast.
night, 6 o'clock Pacific time.
And it's live, so
it is live.
Guests can chime in and ask questions of you and your guests.
Yeah.
And I found it to be an invaluable resource, along with having the benefit of being able to be a guest with you guys. And it's I'm so grateful that I could sit down with you guys and talk today. Thank you so much for...
And you were a great guest. We loved having you. And
Thank
people
you.
Still comment on that show. So.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's fun having you here. It's like full circle. You're
Yeah.
on our turf, but we're on your show.
That's right.
Which is fun.
I was just saying to Sherry when I was trying it over, like, I really wonder how that's going to, like, feel. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like it's a different energy, because it's like, oh yeah, welcome to it's home and away, but like the home team is is away.
But, we're sitting in the guest seats.
Are you really?
Yeah, this is where the guests sit when they're on the show. Yeah. So it all makes sense.
I mean, I usually sit here when the guest is here, as you know.
Right. Dan's comfortable.
George is over there in the booth.
I'm usually in the closet. No, this all works nicely.
So with VOBS, that's like, well, before we go too deep into current stuff, because the stuff that I'm really, I guess I'm fascinated by, because we had a conversation at the awards, as both of our shows were nominated for
such as they were,
and
the Voice Arts Awards.
The Voice Arts Awards. That's right.
Last fall.
Yeah,
that's right. And just talking about how great it would be to be able to kind of compare notes about what we've learned from different guests and doing this process and all that stuff. But I guess how did you guys come to? Well, I'll back up. I'll find where you guys intersected. But like Dan, where are you from originally?
I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I spent the first 58 years of my life there. And
what were you doing?
I was the start of my career. I was in radio. I was an on-the-air jock, and then I was a production director at a number of stations in Western New York and in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for 8 months.
What's the experience of being an on-air radio DJ and making that transition from?
Impossible. It's very, very difficult.
What are the
because radio is a very different type of medium from what we do. I think a lot of people come out of radio. Radio is this thing where you're close mic'd, and you're really trying to come across like this.
Yeah.
And here's the weather for today. And that's not voiceover. Voiceover is what you and I are doing right at this very second, and that's having a conversation.
Right.
And a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah.
And when I drifted into a bunch of different things. I mean, I was in radio management for a short bit, and then radio and I parted ways around 1992.
Huh.
And I sold insurance for a while. I then went back to school, got my teaching certificate and my master's in education. I taught for a few years.
What were your subjects?
Social studies.
Oh, no kidding.
American history, the Constitution. And I also taught a course in television studio production.
Oh, great!
It's the studio I built, and then I left education because that's a whole other story in itself. And I found myself doing voiceover through some weird happenstance of finishing my master's project and doing a radio documentary as my master's project.
So you did. What did you like? I guess it's funny to me that the on ramp into voiceover is always. I know when I'm talking about it, I kind of glaze over it until I started really realizing that on ramp was actually the thing that so many of the people who are listening to the show or people who ask me will say, like, how did you pick up the phone and call a guy with a mic? Or did you have equipment around, or
right.
Like what was that journey for you?
Well, it was somewhat accidental. I mean, I was doing this documentary, which is which I still have. It's a great documentary. It's about this jazz musician in Buffalo, and which is a great story. But I realized when I started recording this, because I had to get equipment for it, I got a mic and I got a digital recorder. And I recorded it and started learning how to use digital equipment. Because remember, back in radio, it was reel-to-reel and razor blades and a grease pencil for editing.
Right.
So I had learned the basics of how to record. So translating that into digital was sort of like drawing with crayons.
That's exactly right.
Right. So I started to realize, well, wait a second. If I can do this in my basement with this digital equipment, shouldn't I be able to record my own commercials and stuff like that? I'm just as effective and just as good as any recording studio in town.
Yeah.
And I went to my computer and I typed in voiceover. This was in 2003. And it was like when Dorothy opens the door from Kansas, from black and white into color. This industry, this online voiceover industry that we see ourselves in today, was just starting to come online.
Oh,
and
it's interesting because I had discovered the voiceover world are kind of close to the same time period.
Really, that same time frame.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah,
you were out in
early
LA by then?
early 2000s.
Yeah, and then it just and I became part of the community, and which is kind of unique in our business.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in the acting business, if you're an on-camera person, you don't really, you see each other in the casting room,
Right.
and you're like giving each other the eye. It doesn't happen in voiceover. We support each other, and
Yeah.
and I've watched this community grow, and but that's how I got into voiceover, and then George and I met later on. But why don't you tell them where you came from?
Well, where are you from originally?
I'm from the Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
If you're from Philadelphia, you can say it in 2 syllables. Philadelphia. And I still say water. I get called out for that a lot.
You don't say worse or...
No, I think it's more Pittsburgh.
Okay.
That's right.
But yeah, I grew up in that area and went to school down in Virginia Tech. Came back from school. I knew I wanted to get into recording. I started in school as an electrical engineer and almost failed out of school.
What?
It was really hard.
What was it about electrical engineering? Was it that
it required work.
Oh, I see.
Studying.
But you didn't want to do the work. I see. That's how you almost failed. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, it was
it's
hard.
knowable.
I was kind of misdirected. I knew I wanted to get into audio gear and audio somehow, but I didn't know anybody in recording at all. So I didn't have a context for what it meant to be a recording
Why'd you want to
engineer.
be in recording? What was it about? Did you mess with it as a kid?
Well, I had a music background. My dad was a tinkerer. My dad had a Ewer reel-to-reel.
Oh, jeez.
65 or 66
UHER,
Ewer
German
reel-to-reel.
company, yeah.
Is that the big ones that they have like running like computers?
In its day, it was the cheap Nagra.
Okay.
Like it was the $2,000 Nagra instead of the $8,000 Nagra. And we're talking
Right.
66. So this
Wow.
thing, my dad sold stuff to buy this thing. Anyway, he always was into recording stuff that way. And I just started tinkering with recording as a kid. So I always liked that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a career in it or anything. And then I knew I liked audio, and I went off to be an electrical engineer, because I thought that was what I needed to be doing.
Huh.
And then I
to
went
do this work, or that's just
to get into the engineering world. I thought I had to start as an engineer, like an electrical engineer.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It was kind of misdirected a little bit in my mind. Anyway, I got into Virginia Tech by some luck as an engineer. Like, went right in as an engineer, and I didn't do well. I struggled really hard, but I ended up taking a music class on jazz history and finding I loved it. And they had a recording studio there, and the class was taught near the studio in another adjacent room, but the room had Neumann mics hanging all over the place.
Oh,
and I was
man.
like, wow, this is sweet. So long story short, I ended up transferring to music and getting a degree in recording engineering at Virginia Tech at the time, which didn't really exist. I basically had to create my own program. That's a whole other story in itself, which I won't go into.
Completely relate to that, though, because the school I went to was the same kind of thing. They didn't offer what I wanted to do.
You carved out.
You carve it out between electives and whatever.
Yeah, we had this thing called design to option, which was an interesting thing at Virginia Tech.
Huh.
Even though it was this big engineering school, we were in the School of Music, which was part of the another part of another school, and we could do stuff like that, and I did, and I ended up making my own degree. So I was very lucky to do that, and then came home. My dad and I started a recording business in an RV, an Eldorado camper. You rarely will see one, but if you're driving around Venice and you see one of those funky aluminum siding RVs with the cab over bed, the thing, it was like one of those. And I did recording out of that, and it was a lot of fun. Made a little money here and there. Didn't make the money back, but my dad was just so gracious. He wanted to see me succeed, but it wasn't like he said, "All right, time to pay up, son. You wasted a lot of money on this." He was very cool that way. It was fun for him. It was really a hobby.
Yeah.
And I worked with a voice actor out of a broadcast studio in New York called WYSP. Which is now WIP Sports, but at the time it was the Howard Stern station.
Okay.
And they did all the Eagles football games. And through a connection of mine at the station, who was a very good friend that got me into this whole thing, I ended up taking over doing broadcast after 9/11 happened.
Wow.
I ended up taking over the remote broadcast for the Eagles football team, and was then doing all the remotes on the road and at home for all Eagles football games on the radio. So I was the engineer in the booth.
Yeah.
At the stadiums.
Man.
So that was fun and stressful.
Yeah,
and
no
interesting.
doubt.
But that was just a short stint. I did that till 2004 when I decided to move out here, in the January 2004, and came out and became a film production mixer.
Oh, no kidding! So you worked location?
Yeah, because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't. At that point, I had worked with a voice actor, but I didn't know the voice world at all. I came out here going on Craigslist and going, okay, what kind of gigs can I find on Craigslist?
Yeah.
And I cobbled together a field recording kit with literally a paint pole, the basics. A portable DAT that I got on eBay that was needed to have an extra battery pack. It was cobbled together. But I did that, and I had some success in that, and I almost went union a couple of times.
Wow.
Because the shows were supposed to Taft-Hartley or flip, as they would call it, or whatever, and never happened. And then, out of the blue, I got a call from that one client I met in New York named Howard Parker, and he said, hey, I hear you're in L.A. I need some help with my studio out here. Do you want to help me out? And I said, sure. What about Lane? What about the guy that set it up? He's like, oh, well, I fly him out here every 6 months, but now that you're here, why don't you just do it? I was like, okay, sure. So I helped him out, and we hit it off, and then he told his manager, Jason Marks, in New York, and Jason started telling a couple clients, and that was the seed. I call Howard my client zero, as it were.
And why hasn't he been on our show yet?
It could happen.
Okay, all right.
He's a pretty reclusive, private guy, but it could happen. Anything could happen.
Yeah,
anything. Can happen.
He would be great to interview. Actually, I bet he would be honored to do it if we could get him on, because he's the kind of guy that would love to share a story or two.
Yeah,
but that's where it started out, and I eventually had to go full VO because Don LaFontaine fell into my lap at one point, and and then I realized, okay, I got to take this pretty seriously. I can't be doing this as a side gig anymore.
Right.
And I dropped film production completely, sold all my gear, and
went
full on, like in 2005, I guess, 2006, went full voiceover tech stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What a fascinating journey. And it's been and now how did you guys intersect? You were still in Buffalo, yes?
I was in Buffalo
a couple years later.
Yeah. And what happened with me is that I would, in the community and some of the Facebook pages and LinkedIn, people would ask me questions. And I seemed to be the guy that knew the answers for home studio stuff.
Answer man.
Yeah. And I wrote a column. People recognized who I was. So I would go to a lot of voiceover conferences, and then people would actually say, "You're Dan Lenard? I read all that stuff you write." Well, it was very strange. But George and I met at a voice conference in Los Angeles in 2008. It was Voice 2008, and I was stupidly on staff for that. Which was...
What does that mean? You on staff? Were you coordinating or
slave labor?
It was.
Oh yeah.
We were paying the full freight for being at this conference, but we were servicing the people who were running it.
I got you.
Yeah, it was. But one of my responsibilities was producing the rooms where presentations were going on. And I don't know who it was that canceled out, but George,
I don't know either.
George was brought in as a last second replacement to talk about home studio tech. And my job was to produce the room, make sure the microphones were working, make sure the engineers were there, make sure he was comfortable, make sure he had water, all that kind of stuff. And so he's in there about 20 minutes before he goes on, and he starts going through his slides to see what's up there, and he's showing ISDN, and he's showing this compressor, and and these speakers, and I'm like, this is he's going to be talking to a bunch of noobs, and it's going to go way over their heads. So I go running up there, and I'm like, do you realize who this audience is?
Yeah. This is what's a good USB microphone kind of a question, right?
I didn't know who the audience really was.
Right.
I was thrust into this thing. I had never spoken in public. Really?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was literally like, trial by fire.
Yeah. So we went through his presentation, yanked out all of the, the stuff that's like, I talk about this.
Redacted things.
Yeah, we very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And he was a hit, and we've been buddies ever since.
Awesome.
We just found that we had a lot in common, and that,
we'd gossip about this stuff on Skype and whatnot.
Right.
And then 2011 January-ish.
Yeah. Right. Well, we had done it. We did a live seminar at the Don LaFontaine Lab.
We did do one thing together.
And we did a few webinars together. And then we're talking about maybe we should do a podcast on this because we know how.
Yeah.
And then one day we were talking on Skype, and I said, "Hey, did you listen to Car Talk this morning? They were talking about this thing," and he's like, "Yeah, I did hear that one." And then it just suddenly dawned. It must have been a bolt of lightning. At the same time, we came up with the idea: why don't we do the show? Since we're troubleshooters, why don't we do it like Car Talk? And
man!
And
that was the
that was the genesis of that. Yeah.
Once you find that little, like, that box or the hook, or what is it aside from us just sitting there talking?
Right.
What makes it special? Why are people going to tune in? Oh, that's brilliant.
Right. And then the next challenge was
how.
Yeah, were we going to do it just as a podcast? And then George got very interested in the idea of doing it as a webcast with cameras and everything. And
I guess I thought of it as radio kind of at first.
Yeah.
But then I couldn't find any good ways to stream audio online live at the time.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, we'll use this thing called Ustream.
Right.
But it's a video platform. All right, well, let's just turn on our cameras. What the hell?
Yeah.
We both have webcams.
Yeah.
And we never turned them off.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, he did a tremendous job of researching and pulling together, this is how we're going to do this. Because I'm just sitting in my studio back in Buffalo, and I'm over Skype.
The first episode was a train wreck.
Somewhat,
the feed dropped out like 7 different times.
Yeah.
It is on YouTube. It's all glued
episode
together.
1, yeah.
With all the dropouts. UAB's episode 1.
Yeah.
If you want to check it out.
It's actually pretty funny. I mean, we had a great time doing it. And
we had people calling in. I mean, we wanted it to be a full-blown call-in show.
Yeah.
Until we realized that it was hard to find enough people to call into a show every week.
Yeah.
About this stuff.
Yeah.
And then we just was the first show we did, was Pat on that first show, Pat Fraley, or was that the second show?
I think it was Pat Fraley.
We first off, we got Harlan Hogan interested in sponsoring us.
He sponsored
he was from there from the
episode
beginning, and he's still
sponsoring you guys.
Yeah.
6.5
years. And we had Pat Fraley on as a guest, and of course we didn't have him on camera. He was just talking to us.
He was on the phone.
Right.
Oh wow. On the phone.
Right. And then we started getting people on Skype, and we were able to do these 3-way interviews, and it just we used social media very wisely. And this was in 2011, March 2011.
Yeah.
We just celebrated, we've been doing this 6.5 years, which is,
Yeah.
so we figure we're going to get it down sooner or later. We're going to figure out how we're going to do this.
Right. We could still apologize.
Yeah. But we started to get, better and better guests on, and we formatted, my experience in radio taught me how to format a show, so we created an actual format. Okay, we're going to do this for so long and this, and then we'll go to a break. And then we picked up some other sponsors. Source Elements came in, and a few others, and we were able to afford to upgrade the equipment. And we did EWABs for 4 years, East West Audio Body Shop we called it, and then in 2015, for a lot of different crazy reasons, my wife and son and I moved out here to California.
All of them equally crazy.
Yes.
All of them. Well,
no.
Reason 5 was the crazy one, which was January and February in Buffalo.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, but it was for opportunity. Voiceover is here. Yeah. Great opportunity for my younger son, who's an animator.
Great.
And and my mom lives in Orange.
Well,
so it was totally synchronicitous, if such a word exists. And And then we found this house with this studio.
Oh my God!
In, which people can't see because it's a podcast. But this studio was already a recording studio. It was the garage. Yeah. But the people who owned the house prior were musicians, and they built this as a recording studio. And I found it on Zillow. I said, we gotta buy that house. And we put a bid on, and we got this house, and it made a perfect voiceover studio, and it also makes a great television studio.
It's a great utility space, and to be able to do what you guys are doing, it's just, it's such a, I'm sure you get it in feedback from, both social media and people who respond during the week, but your show is such a tremendous gift to people who are, at every level. At every level. I was listening to the episode you had with Sarah Jane Sherman on the other day, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And she said some stuff that just completely blew my mind and changed the way I approach copy.
Was that episode 85?
That was 85.
Just for your reference, for your listeners.
Yeah, yes. Watch episode 85.
85 with Sarah Jane Sherman.
It's amazing. It was just a simple comment about you get sides,
Yeah.
but I think about them as sides to the character.
Right.
And the framing of that notion.
Right. I always thought a side was what you got when you were doing a musical.
Right. Right, exactly. Just like, oh, here's just a sample of what we want.
Right.
But like I was teaching last night and really was driving that point home with my students about like you need to think about the full range of what this character is and how can you interpret them differently based on the specs.
Right.
And why did the casting director give you exactly this versus any other copy? And
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
So it was really really just valuable and helpful and
That's cool.
and
That's
so
really cool.
just as for, worth like one tip or one truth to be able to walk away from the thing with. It's really really great.
Yeah.
We certainly make you wait for it, though.
Yes,
It's a long
I had to
show.
wade through a whole lot. I love the format of your show though. When you listen to something for a while, you get a sense of what that format is going to be, what
Yeah,
that
the
pattern
rhythm.
is.
Yeah.
You know, and being a guest, it was cool to be in the chair and watching you guys do the troubleshooting for guests and to be able to throw a comment in here or there, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, it's I don't know. I think
It's
a
great
blast.
fun. I had some experience as a talk show host when I was in radio and spent some time in public television. So, and my degree was in broadcasting.
Yeah.
So setting up a television studio and understanding studio operations, both of us know that stuff.
I had a minor in communications.
Okay.
I was on AM radio from 2 to 4 a.m.
Oh, okay. It's been
W-
15 years on
WUPT.
radio.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you were just turning
I had
dials.
one semester
yeah.
of television production at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that drives me nuts when I talk to people. You know, when I'm helping them with their home studios, they go, "Well, I've been doing this for 20 years, but I was talent."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, were you
yeah.
talent that were you actually writing your levels and doing all that work at the same time?"
Right.
Yeah.
So that experience in radio was very valuable to me, and it gave me an edge to teach other people how to do it.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, Dan. Is that voice actors are in the revolution of home entertainment, home theater, home recording.
studios,
That's
yeah.
it. Sorry. You see how often I say
Personal.
it.
They
I
only-
need to
they
my
only
class.
call
The
them
personal home
studios.
The personal home studio. And in this era, how tech savvy actors need to be.
And aren't.
and aren't. Yeah.
Yeah.
From your standpoint, what do you think is minimum system requirements? What's something that if an actor doesn't know how to do, say, Audacity, what's the minimum system requirement? I know, like when I'm teaching in class, I can say it can be easy. There are easy ways around it, but
Right.
I mean, what are you guys?
Our philosophy, and George comes from a more sophisticated engineering background than I do. I was an on-air engineer. I know how to. I understood modulation and all these other things. But what we've come to a consensus just in the hundreds and probably thousands of people that we've worked with, that it's actually quite simple, and that when I arrived here in Southern California and started working with people, people were 10 years behind. They were using a lot of obsolete equipment. They were taught wrong. They were taught by some recording engineer that said, "Well, you need this processor and you got to have this."
Or a radio producer.
Or
lots of processing
Right.
and compression and
Right.
all sorts of...
And I keep thinking, how much work were these people not getting because they were recording like that? Whereas modern recording requires very simple things. And we've been able to break it down to a couple of very simple rules. The majority of the quality of your audio is dependent on the acoustical space in which you record. So if you're recording in a bathroom, people are going to tell you're recording in a bathroom.
Yeah.
And it has to be, you can't have room reflection. You can't have exterior noise coming in, so you've got to find a really quiet space. And how you use your microphone, not necessarily the mic you use. You don't want to use a cheap mic, but you want to use a mic that is, over $250. There's slight little differences, but people say, "What's the best microphone for voiceover?" And
I always have to say, what's your
price point?
What's your budget?
What's your budget for that sort of thing? I'll be happy to for you to buy $1,000 mic, but
Right.
there's no microphone out there that will change the way you perform.
That's
copy.
right. That's right. It's like what's the best price I can pay for a microphone? how much are you willing to spend on good acting classes?
Right. And the more expensive the microphone, the more critical the acoustical space you're recording.
Huh. That's interesting too. Wow.
Yeah, it's more if it's more sensitive, it hears more, which means the room is more critical and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you could even start out with right mic technique. You could probably start out with an ATR 2100, which is really a podcaster's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dynamic mic, but I've heard that mic sound exceptionally good. And what's good about it is it's dynamic.
Yeah.
So it's a lot less sensitive to bad room acoustics. But it takes some skill. Any mic takes skill to use correctly. And just like Dan said, it still takes good acoustics. One mic that's less sensitive to background noise will also be less sensitive to your voice.
Huh.
So then you need more gain. You use more gain, and
You're
then it
getting
gets
more
noisy. You know, so it's not one thing. Fix one thing and something else. It's like a balance. You know.
Yeah.
So what mics we'll recommend is going to depend a lot on people's budget, what the spaces they're recording in,
What their voice is
and
like.
sometimes
Yeah.
if they're a man or a woman. You
Yeah.
know, there's some mics I may recommend differently for women, but generally, you know, mics are pretty accurate instruments. They all just have slightly different variations in response.
And no engineer can hear the difference.
They only would hear the difference in a controlled environment where they
Right.
were able to A/B your voice against 7 mics.
But they're not
Then they
doing
might
that.
hear 7 mics and go, "Yeah, I like that one better."
Yeah.
But in out of context, if they just get your voice on a mic recorded reasonably accurately,
Yeah.
and it's not boomy and muddy and plosive or
Room
super
reflection.
sibilant, as long as it sounds relatively accurate and relatively clean,
And properly modulated at the right level.
it's gonna be fine. So you know, $100 to $200 is a good starting point. I like the AT 2035.
Yeah,
for
not the
150
2020.
bucks.
The 2035.
2020 is meh.
Yeah,
2035
35 's good
worth
mic.
the extra $50. It's a good mic. That's a great starting point. You know, we'll plug our buddy Harlan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the
The
VO1A.
VO1A,
Uh-huh.
which is made by MXL. It's a great sounding mic on men. I think maybe on women it can be a little bright,
Uh-huh.
depending. But it
Meaning,
sounds awesome.
what is that?
All right, let's talk about bright.
What does that mean?
People, when you're describing audio in verbal terms,
Yeah,
It's
you have to
very
interpret
difficult.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you'll hear producers and people use terms like bright, muddy, dark, woolly, fuzzy, hollow, honky, whatever it is, MIDI, nasal. I think of honking as nasal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, not that kind of honky.
I understand.
And so
I
like
get
a
that
mic
note all the
that's-
time, actually.
Yeah, a mic that's too bright. You're just too honky.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, man.
Sorry.
Next. But yeah, if the mic is really bright, that means it's very sensitive to high frequency.
Okay.
So it's very SC and sibilant, and it just really picks up a lot of that
Which
stuff.
is a problem with a lot of women's voices.
A lot of women, and
Some
amazingly,
guys.
a number of men's voices too. I've worked with men all the time who have a sibilant voice, and sibilance is part of your acting skill and your ability. It's a physiological thing. You can actually train yourself
Well, yeah, because
out of sibilance.
Yeah, with voice acting, a lot of some of the audio problems are actually physical voice problems, and they come from overemphasis on certain syllables. And if someone overemphasizes and overperforms, as opposed to talking like they're just having a conversation with somebody, which is what all these producers seem to want these days,
Yeah.
those problems go away. Mouth noise, clicks and stuff like. Everybody's like, "What's the answer to mouth clicks? Granny Smith apples or Alkalong or all these different remedies that are out there." Like, relax, just be yourself and talk the way you're supposed to normally talk at the right mic distance, and it'll probably be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stress makes a lot of mouth clicks.
Yeah,
And a mic that is bright picks up more mouth clicks also, because clicks are high
High
frequency
frequency.
things. So a bright mic picks them up more. Another thing is the closer the mic is, the more it hears mouth clicks. And then the quieter that you speak, the louder the mouth clicks are in relative to your voice.
Right.
Right? Because
Because
mouth
if
clicks
you're-
are mechanical. When you open your mouth or do anything, the sound of those sounds don't vary. It's like a harpsichord. It's the same volume no matter what. But your voice, you can vary dramatically in volume all the time. So if you're speaking softly and the mic is close, it magnifies the mouth noise. Those clicks get so much more. They're just so much more obvious.
That's why it's such a audiobook audition killer or whatever.
Yeah.
It's brutal because you aren't, especially for folks who are working in a smaller space at home or
small spaces are hard to work.
You know, you don't have the room to.
They're hard to work in.
You know, kind of expand and stretch out.
This room's about 14 by 16. I don't know, something like that.
I think it's
a little smaller than
12,
that, and we're 2 feet away from the mic, and we can do that because we have a big open ceiling, vaulted with panels and everything, and the room's treated. Most people don't have that luxury, you know. And this is ideal to be able to work this far from the mic. This is the kind of thing you can do in a great professional studio.
Right. Yeah. And if you go over to Disney or one of those other places in their studios, that's where the mic is. Here.
That's right.
Everybody else is like trying to talk really, and you don't even need a pop screen if you use the mic properly.
The mic's like way up here.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking it in those terms. I mean, you've seen my home studio. I mean, am I for commercial auditions for all those other kind of things? Because that really strikes me too. Of like you go into the Warner Brothers or any looping situation, and the mic is
up there,
3 feet away from you.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, granted, they're probably, but you know, the way I work with my mic on the mixing board, I'm probably at like 9 o'clock where I've got all this gain I could possibly use, but I don't use any of it because I'm going to get loud and I don't, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's so directional with a 416, I can probably be this distance.
Well, it was designed for that. Remember, the 416 was designed as a video mic.
Right.
So it's highly directional to be on top of a camera or on the end of a boom out of sight of the camera.
But we've become accustomed to the way that mic sounds very close.
Right.
Because of its use in studios with voice actors. So now we're used to it sounding up close, and it's used up close a lot now in voiceover.
Yeah.
So it's the mic, it's the room of the size of the room, it's the distance, all those things to go together. And we haven't even talked about preamps, cables, AD converters, and all the other crap, because that stuff is so far down the hierarchy.
Yeah.
We'll that's why we spend so much energy talking about all this other more, I don't know,
simple
esoteric.
Stuff.
Well, it's simple, but it's esoteric too, because it's not so. People just want to hear, what mic do I buy? What cable do I get? What preamp do I buy?
That's not what's going to get you to work.
They just want to know their shopping list.
That's right.
That's right. That's not the secret at all.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, but then you know, you got to hook the mic to the computer. So a reasonably good mic cable, you know, $20 to $30 mic cable, and $100 interface.
Yeah. And the funny thing is the Scarlett 2i2, which we recommend.
Solo.
The price of these interfaces is under $150.
Yeah.
And the sound quality out of those is like 100 times better than what we were putting out when I was in
20
radio.
years ago, sure.
Yeah, you know.
Man.
And a lot of people create these audio chains that they were given, like we were talking earlier, and they're not relevant anymore. Everything that could be done to process your audio, if you understand how to process your audio, why you need to process your audio, or if you need to at all,
or when it's appropriate,
when it's appropriate, it can all be done on the back end. It's all can be done in post with software. The software is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So any corrections that you need to make, and that's the thing about processing, is it's not there to enhance your voice. It's there to make minor corrections to the way the frequency or the response of the microphone, the room you're in, if there's a little sibilance or something along those lines. It's not there to enhance your voice. And we get a lot of people who get stuck on this. I got to get this compressor. I got to get this stuff because that's what so-and-so has. Yeah, but, you know, George has the greatest joke of all time about this, because people would always ask him, what is it you've got in Don LaFontaine's studio? Don LaFontaine.
They did.
The guy would sound good on a Radio Shack electret condenser mic. You know?
When he died, people were literally asking me, can I buy his stuff? Can I borrow his gear? I'm like, you know what? I don't think his wife needs to sell it, first of all, and I don't think Nita wants to sell it.
And it won't help you.
Shrine.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, that was a big misnomer. Buying all that gear was gonna book you gigs.
Yeah, it's right.
No,
it's not like, you know, like like our hi-fi systems in the 70s of like what's the biggest thing so you can really
Right.
Make Rush sound awesome. Rush already sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's
Did
right.
you see that documentary on Netflix? About
No,
that?
I haven't. I was
Oh my
just
God,
just
you
randomly
gotta
pulling
watch
Rush.
it.
Okay, I'll
You
watch
gotta
it.
watch it.
That's awesome.
So good.
But like, it's great to hear that, and to be able to share that wisdom about processing and posting, and there's that overlap of tech and creative, between the two of you guys, and it really hits all marks, because there might be something that someone assumes is a tech question where it's your voice, man,
Right.
or vice versa. You can solve that problem with some more proximity, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Or less proximity.
Or less proximity.
The show started out, really as a tech show, and we
That didn't
realized
last
over
long.
time. Well, we realized over time that, well, first of all, guests that are actors didn't want to come on and talk tech, and some guests may even shy away from being on the show. We've gotten that. Maurice
Marsh didn't want to be. I'm not a tech person.
He didn't want to
I
be
don't
on.
care.
We had to convince him that no, we're not going to drill you about your gear. We just want to talk to you. So we realized the show had to morph, and then we talk a lot less tech. The show is like a two-parter. It's talking tech for a half hour, interviewing a guest about anything for 45 minutes.
But-
that's the show.
Yeah, but we do it in a fun way. I mean, we try to be as personable as possible. It's like my life, George's life. I was doing this, I was doing
Sometimes
that.
there's dogs in the studio. Sometimes there's a bird in the studio.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's people having snacks.
Yeah.
Sometimes my daughter's here crawling around on the floor. It's raw.
Yeah.
But we try to make it as professional as we can at the same time. We walk that fine line between being off the cuff, raw and natural and fun, but also tightly formatted, predictable, can count on the show coming on, and that's challenging.
That
it
is
doesn't always
challenging.
start right at 6.
Yeah, no.
Most nights
man.
it does, but not always.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
doing it live, right? That creates a really unique set of challenges, especially if you're driving up the 405. I'm sorry, Dan, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Well, no, it takes a lot of preparation, probably more so than
More than we do.
yeah. I mean, we've been doing it a while. We know how to do it. But when you
If this
think,
was like a real TV studio, they'd probably spend the entire day
Yeah.
prepping,
I
getting
mean,
it dialed.
yeah, they have a staff.
Right.
I mean,
Color correction,
We
miles.
get here 2.5 hours before the show.
Yeah, I'm here a lot longer before that.
He's here a lot longer.
I mean, because this is my.
He lives here.
Oh, yeah.
This is my office and my studio.
Our technical director, Andrew, he gets here about 2 hours before the show.
Uh-huh.
I get here around the same time usually, and that's it. And
Yeah.
we prep, and
Yeah.
hopefully everything comes together by 6.
Yeah, I mean,
most of the time it does.
Yeah, I have to format the show in the morning and say, okay, I want who's going to be the guest. We're going to talk about this, and of course, it usually is about 10 to 6 that we're like, well, we could do this.
Well, that's my fault. That's
Because he's usually
me.
trying to solve some
Yeah, but
problem.
He's like, I'm just going to install this driver. That's how Monday's show started.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
no.
then the computer reboots, and then the next thing I go, oh, I'll just do this. Oh, that thing doesn't work anymore.
Oh, man.
It's we do as we say, not as we do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't
man.
do what we do. We screw up all the time. People know it's just kind of part of the thing. They know that we make mistakes, things go wrong.
Yeah. Well, but we're also doing this completely software driven. There's the hardware is some basic hardware, the mixer and the computers and stuff, and stuff like and the cameras, but all of the switching, all the processing, all of the other elements, the video that goes.
all happening in that computer. Right
Yeah,
there.
there's a
This
and a
laptop-
MacBook Pro. Yeah.
MacBook Pro. Yeah.
And
Man alive.
that has its limitations because you're feeding an awful lot into one computer. Like, maybe I could do this. Maybe should I do this now?
There's a reason dedicated hardware exists, because
Yeah,
they're built to do one job really, really well and to be really, really reliable.
Right.
So we're trying to emulate what a $10,000 to $50,000 studio would be doing with a $5,000 or a $3,000 studio.
We've gone through a few iterations of equipment in the last year.
Yeah. I mean, we do a hell of a lot with very little.
Yeah.
That's just always been my thing, though. Like, I had spent some time interning at Sigma Sound in Philadelphia, which was a major studio where they recorded the OJs and the Jackson 5 and all the stuff in the 70s. They had the platinum and the gold and the whole thing, and the Roots were downstairs recording on the ground floor of the studio when I was there all the time. That was their home base. It was a cool place, but that wasn't my world. I spent a few months there, and I was like, no, this isn't for me. And they stopped calling me in after a while, and I was more fun. I was more at home with just a couple of mics, an 8-track recorder, recording a jazz combo in my parents' house or on location, just working with the bare basics and getting the best I could get out of those basics.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very natural to be working on the basics, not saying, well, I can't do this show. I can't do this without $50,000. Forget it. It's not going to happen. I can't do it. That's not been my attitude. It's like,
Fortunately.
let's make it work. And it doesn't always work great. And the most frustrating thing is when it does work great for a few months or 6 months or 8 months,
And all of a sudden.
and then it doesn't.
Yeah.
And you go, what?
What is causing that? Is it like is it a software update? Is it a BIOS?
Software, sometimes it's hardware. Sometimes you just don't know, and it's just maddening. We have literally canceled one show ever.
Yeah.
Where we've been ready to go on the air and we had to send a guest home. First time just a couple of months ago. And and you would think after doing this for 6 years that would not ever happen again. But it happens. And fortunately she came back.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was gracious enough to come back.
And gave Kiff that great
that was Sarah.
Oh, that was Sarah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sarah
wow.
was here. I was in Buffalo.
You were in Boulder.
Sorry, Boulder.
Oh,
I think of
Boulder,
Buffalo University. University of Colorado Buffaloes, the Buffs. That's where that all comes together. But I was there, and so if I was physically here, I might have been able to start yanking the computer apart and triaging it and sweating profusely and all this stuff and getting us on the air hook or by crook. But
and then Andrew wasn't there that night.
It was just a perfect storm. I was trying to do it all remotely. It was just a perfect storm. So it happened, and then we just pivoted, and she came back. And we had a great show. It's fun. Our loyal fans get it.
Yep.
And then we try to put out a product on podcast and audio, and then the YouTube product that is pretty tight.
Yeah.
So if there are major train wrecks, we do edit the show.
Yeah.
And before it goes on YouTube, we will chop out the big train wrecks. We trim the heads and tail. Make sure it's a tight show, before we upload it. But most of the shows you're seeing, when you see Dan and I, and hey, this is Dan Lenard, and that's literally that's us hitting the record button, and then at the end it's us hitting stop. There's no edits in most of the shows,
and that was done deliberately because we're just lazy.
We didn't want to do it. I was like, from day one, I was like, we are not doing post.
We hardly have time to do this.
This has got to be
You
it.
can lop out what doesn't work and just lop it out.
Right.
With the during the 6.5 years that you guys have been doing the show, what are some either not necessarily memorable moments? I don't want to. It's not like the best of Johnny Carson, but like what things, what truths have you heard either that was given to you by someone that sent something in, or from each other, or from a guest that changed your trajectory or changed your paradigm, the way you think or teach or just process?
Well, I mean, aside from some of the really great guests that we've had on here, the certain patterns emerge because we ask, where did you come from? Why are you successful at what you do? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of commonality to that, which is I prepared, I worked, I studied. When the opportunity came, I was able to perform. And
luck favors the prepared.
Yes,
is the very, very short version.
Yeah, or as my father-in-law used to say, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yes,
there you go.
And so that's been, I think, in the voiceover business, that's the truth I've gotten out of it. Most of the guests, we've very rarely had tech guests on. We have a sponsor on or something. I mean, we've had sort of settlements on, and when things get a little geeky, it can be a little weird, but
well, we went and interviewed Wes Dooley.
Oh, well, that was a lot of fun.
We went to Wes Dooley's facility in Pasadena. They make their AEA mics, which are redos
of the old RCA mics,
the venerable RCA mic that you think
mics.
of, the big salt shaker-shaped
Oh,
mic
yeah.
and the desk
Boom,
mic
boom,
you think
boom.
of.
Like all that, like
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the,
The 40s and 30s, those rhythm mics. He still makes those in Pasadena. And he has a mic museum. And we sat literally in his mic museum. And
these
he
mics
just
behind us.
and he just talked and talked and talked.
And,
you know,
and great stuff in what
so
he
cool.
had to say. And,
and he still does that to this day.
Yeah.
If we see him at a trade show, he just on and on and on. But yeah, most of the guests aren't tech related. They're actors, and you know, I can't not say June Foray.
Well, that was, and Tom Kenny, and
Tom Kenny,
which was, I mean, we've had some very great people on the show.
Yeah.
And it was great meeting June Foray, even though it was virtual for me. George got to meet her personally.
Oh, yeah.
She was in my house.
Yeah, she was so gracious, and I got that opportunity to say, you know, I remember we were talking about. When I hear your voice, all I hear is Bill Scott going, "Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat," and she jumped right into, "Well, that trick never works." And it was like
immediately.
It was like my life is complete.
Yeah.
You know, it really was. That was a magical moment, and you know, when she passed away last week, it was a sad time, but it was also worth celebrating because she led an amazing life.
Oh.
Tom Kenny came over to your house
Dude,
and
talk
hung
about
out.
the most freaking genuine, freaking sweetest dude ever.
Yeah,
like,
He was a riot.
it was just fortuitous timing because he was flying into LA and he found out that the studio, my place was in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I'll come by. I'm on my way home to the Valley or wherever he lives." And he's like, "I'll just come by." I was like, "Oh, okay." What the? And he hung out because our guests have to wait for us to do the first half of the show.
Yeah.
He hung out in the living room with my at the time 3-year-old daughter for like 45 minutes, just hanging out in the living room. She didn't know him from anybody at that point. She didn't know what SpongeBob was, and to this day, I'm like, if she sees SpongeBob, I'm like, you know, hung out with that guy in the living room. She's like, what?
Yeah,
You know,
we have
so
to get
fun.
him. We have to get him on in the studio here.
Oh yeah,
he
he's
lives
in
around the
area,
corner.
right?
Yeah,
He's in the area. So
yeah, and that's probably one of the best parts about being here in Southern California and here in the Valley is that these people could literally ride their bike over here.
Yeah.
You know, we're here in Sherman Oaks, and a lot of them live in Studio City or Valley Village or in Encino or Tarzana and Toluca Lake, and it's easy to get here. This house was. This was a godsend to find this place where we did.
Oh, man.
You know, because we're right at the confluence of the 101 and the 405.
And if you don't have to cross the 405 or cross the 101 or be on it.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's
just come up Beverly Glen. You'll be here in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
You know? And that's been very valuable. I think that's probably the best part, you know, since we started doing the show together. But it also has allowed us to be closer friends because we're in the same place now. I mean, I was on the other side of the planet.
we go fly radio control planes together.
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Or we want to do it some more.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to. I mean, God, we did 190 something episodes of
196.
E-Labs, and we're up to episode 88 with this show.
Man.
I'm really trying to answer your question. Like, what's something that stands out? I just remember Roger Leopardi for some reason.
Oh, well, he tells it like it is.
He was at my house at the time, in the studio, and yeah, even before we went on the air, he was there really early.
Yeah.
And I wish we recorded the pre-show. I think he didn't want us to, because I think he really wanted to just give us his knowledge. But yeah, for 45 minutes before we went on the air, he talked about this and that.
Yeah.
But he seemed like he came from a position of, I have this figured out. and I know what I'm doing, and here are my secrets, you know, and that was just so cool. And he shared a lot on the show too. I mean, that was, I don't know, for some reason he stands out. He stands out anyway.
Well, yeah,
he's
you can't
a
miss
unique
him.
looking dude.
Yeah.
But I mean, he stood out. He
Yeah.
stands out. I guess the ones that physically came to my house are the ones that stand out the most because they were in my space.
There's
you know?
there's an intimacy to this thing, this podcast process that
you do them all in
in
face
person.
to face only.
Yeah.
Strictly. You won't let people phone it in.
Right? Not yet.
Yeah.
I haven't. There was it's
hard to replace. It's very hard to replace face to face.
I agree.
Yeah.
And we love technology. We use all those tools, and it's awesome. But it's still not the same.
Yeah. Looking up someone's nostrils from here is a lot different. I mean, when you can meet these people and actually literally touch them and really get their essence, it's very, very different from interviewing them from afar when I was in Buffalo. I mean, I got to meet a lot of people that way, but the contacts that we're making here is much better. And that was essentially, I think that was the real impetus for the show, was we were trying to promote our own businesses of being the foremost experts on home voiceover studios. So we're like, well, then the theme will be total shameless promotion.
Lots of plugging.
Yeah, lots of plugging of our services, and that sort of fell off. And we've gotten back at, hey, look, we're here, doing our jobs.
Sometimes we forget
because we're having too much fun.
Yeah.
And
we do have a lot of great sponsors. I mean, we do have a lot of sponsors that get plugged on the show, and it helps. We're all helping each other out, and every sponsor we have on the show, because we personally believe in what they're doing, and we don't advertise crap.
Right.
And we do have a good deal of commercials. I mean,
yeah.
We probably have as many ads per hour,
maybe not
almost
more.
Almost as many ad hours as maybe a TV show would.
Yeah.
Wow.
But people are accustomed to we actually ask, we have a survey. Are there too many ads? Are they too long? And the vast majority of people say they're fine.
Yeah.
A few people say maybe too many. A couple might say there's some are too long.
But if you were advertising Smucker's Jelly on your show, I'd be like, why are you advertising Smucker's Jelly? Yes, it's delicious.
Well, that's why we have sponsors, so we're not advertising Smucker's Jelly.
That's right.
On when we first started out, and we were we were doing it on YouTube, and
with the YouTube, you get pop-up ads.
The pop-up,
really?
and it would just cut out on us.
With Ustream.
It was with Ustream, right?
Yeah, Ustream.
Right. Really?
The platform we were using to do live streaming was called Ustream. And if you didn't pay a considerable amount of money, they had ads that would preempt the show for a minute at a time. So you'd be just talking away, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy, and then it would be an ad for Valvoline or something.
Oh, my gosh.
And then they'd come out of the ad, and then we'd be sitting here talking like nothing ever happened.
We didn't know.
That was like, all right, that's going to come to an end.
Yeah. So we started to pay for the bandwidth.
Paid for the bandwidth, and then got the advertisers to help us pay for that. The show has almost never come out of pocket.
Wow.
If it came out of anybody's pocket, it was Dan's, and that was... Try to make sure that's the bare minimum that happens.
I hear you.
Bare minimum. The show pays for itself even now.
That's great.
It's great. And then we look for people to be here. Speaking of face-to-face, we want people to be here. It's not a big place.
You mean come and watch when you're doing an
episode?
episode?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Was there an audience here when you were here?
I
know my wife was here.
Yeah, I think Marcy came in, and I don't remember if Kathy was here or not.
Catherine probably wasn't. She comes all the way from San Diego.
Yeah, she comes all the way from San Diego.
Yeah.
She's taken my class right now.
So I hear.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's awesome.
Catherine is our producer, and she's
been booking for us for
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah,
she's awesome. So nice to help us. Yeah, we like people to be here. Like,
great.
It's not big, but there's enough space for maybe 4 or 5, 6 people to pile in here, and it's way more fun for us when there's an audience here hanging out.
I'll take that to heart.
There's
and
energy to people being here, even no matter how small the audience. They're still different than if it's an empty room. So.
I agree. There just feels like this immediate. Even if you see a chat room full of people, there's still just numbers.
Right.
There, that, like. I'm curious, Dan.
That helps. That does help.
Or just seeing
the people commenting.
You see their names. They have a lively discourse going on. It's like a show within the show.
Yeah. It's like, are they even actually watching us? They're sort of watching us.
But it's not the same.
Yeah, the fact that it's in real time. But we found that we did a couple of live shows at the conferences, and then we did our 3rd anniversary show, and the one that we did in Irvine, where we had 40, 50 people watching the show. It was a TV show. And I would say something funny, and people would laugh.
Wow,
and
we got laughs.
We got laughs. We know people are laughing out there because they'll say, hey, that was really funny, Dan, in the chat room. But when you get it immediately, the immediate feedback, it just drives the energy, and you go, I think I'll be funnier. Yeah. When we do live webinars or live seminars, when we would do them at conferences, and suddenly there's 50, 60 people watching it, we're putting on a show. It's showtime, and we want to be funny. We want to be entertaining. People have questions, but they teaching is about keeping people's attention.
That's
and
right.
While people are You know, they're
Yeah.
you've got to keep them entertained, and
If we
so
would
they
just
can relate to
rely
it.
on waiting for questions to come in for every show, we're going to have dead air. We're not going to be.
I think we've answered them all, though.
And we have answered so many questions about tech
man.
at this point. You know, we've answered almost everything, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
And we have a huge, huge show log database because one of our friends, fanatic fans,
Jack.
types notes of every show for us for
Oh my
free
gosh.
and puts them on Google Docs. So we have a huge searchable Google Doc folder of all the show notes from every show. So if you want to know about something,
And when it was in the
just
particular
type
episode,
it in
it's
there and
just
search
it's
for
there.
it.
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it's so cool.
That's so
We have
cool.
such a great little.
And he volunteers. You know,
He
we have
does
a
it
bunch of
voluntarily.
volunteers. I mean, we've got a guy who comes in. Of course, he brings beer too.
That's always helpful.
Who runs the chat room for us from in here, and of course,
Jack Daniel.
yeah, he likes meeting all the celebrities.
I love how he'll say during a break, the chat room is really loving it. Really loving what you have. He's like, they're loving it. They're loving it. The chat room's really loving it. I'm like, Jack, you're
I remember
awesome,
him
man.
saying that. That was
You're
awesome.
awesome, Jack.
It's like, oh, the chat room's going crazy, you guys.
Yeah.
Tonight is the night.
Yes.
Yeah, as I like to say, this is the best show we've done this week.
Yeah.
Tell me how people can find your show, find this database, and find your services, how they can reach out to you to help them get coaching and studio help.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, the show itself is based around our website, which is vobs.tv. Not .com, not whatever. It's .tv.
Okay.
And the show is always running there, but when we go live at 6 o'clock Pacific time, the show is presented there along with the chat room.
Awesome.
So they get the full experience. Just all they have to do is go to our website, and they'll find it there. And the podcast, you know, we say this at the end of every show. The podcast is on Stitcher, Podbean, and iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts are sold. And the show
VOBS, just search for that.
Yeah.
VOBS, it'll come up.
it'll come up, yeah. And then if they need help with their home studios, that's what George and I do. I mean, that is our meat and potatoes business. I'm also a voice actor. I'm also a full-time voice actor. But I so enjoy working with people, especially in their homes, sniffing around their homes. Where's a good spot to put a studio here? But they can reach me at my website is homevoiceoverstudio.com.
Okay.
And they can email me at danlenard.com with no O. It's Lenard. George?
And I am available on georgethetech.com. Or for the geeks, georgethe.tech. TECH. Just found that domain. That was pretty cool. And that's where you can find the services I provide. And you can book me by the 15 minutes, or you can book me by the service, or I design studios from the ground up, and I find a place to put a mic in your walk-in closet and anywhere in between. So
That's great.
whatever you need.
That's, I mean, getting a sense of the scope of what you do. You know, like I know there are folks who are just kind of getting started and don't know even where to begin. And then do I reach out to someone who is, you know, has worked for Dunlop-Fontaine? Is that overkill?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people. I guess I understand. Sometimes people are intimidated, thinking,
Sure.
"Well, you do like Don stuff," and no, I work with voice actors. Like it just doesn't matter. If you're serious enough to hire me, you're going to get extremely focused information very quickly, and you know, I get you on your way.
Right.
So,
And what we offer is tangible, because
Yeah.
it's not like, well, if you work with me, you're going to be successful. That's up to you.
yeah,
You know, a lot of coaches are saying, you know, look at the success I had, and if you study with me, you're going to do, and I'm going to teach you how to do this tech, and then generally we end up mopping up afterwards. There are a couple of coaches out there that just give horrendous technical advice, you know, so there's a lot that people need to learn, but we can simplify it for them, and so they don't have to worry about it, because once you get your audio sorted out, the rest is all performance, and we want people to be able to perform and not think about the tech.
that tech has to fall away.
Yeah.
I've been in debates online about, can you engineer and act at the same time? I don't believe that you can. You have to engineer enough to get it running, and then shut
need
that
to be-
off, and now you're acting.
You have to make yourself in a dungeon reacting to some creature
Right.
And if you're thinking about how hot you are when you're screaming.
Am I clipping? Yeah.
Yeah.
Clipping?
It takes you out of the moment.
Yep.
Oh, guys, this has been fantastic.
It has been.
Yeah.
Thank you
To
so
have you
much
here.
for.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been just a delight to be able to sit and talk with you guys and to see you again and look at our bodies after the whole life challenge.
Yes.
And
And we'll do it again this fall.
We'll do it again this fall.
Are you gonna
and
do it
we'll-
then?
Yeah,
Are
I'll
you
do
gonna
it.
do it?
I'll do it.
Well,
And I'll do
now
it. And
it's
I
on
need.
podcast.
That's it. I'll do it, and I need to do it because I'll do it real good for about a week and a half, and then I start to get lazy.
It's
and I
hard
need
to maintain.
Yeah.
I need to do it. So,
Awesome.
but I will. And thank you so much for listening and joining us. And be sure to check out the guys on VOBS.tv and their services. And keep tuning in. We'll make some more. Peace.